Hello everybody, it's Brian here with a video about recent finds for March. So I guess generally things from the last 30 days or so, although not everything. I didn't want to have too many things. And there's also one item that I can't locate. I wanted to include it and I don't know what I did with it. I looked beside my turntable where my recently played things are, and I look back here and I don't know where it is, so I will possibly include that next time, although if I've misfiled it, it might be misfiled for a very long time, so I'll see how that goes. So what I'll start with instead is, I will call it VCLT, although I'm not sure that it is. For those who don't know, VCLT stands for Vinyl Community Love Train, and people are so generous they send records to each other, although in Canada it's a little more difficult because of our shipping cost, but I was given something in person by a friend of mine, so I'm not sure if I should even call it VCLT. But let me just go and track back a little bit to say that in a previous video I talked about the Leonard Cohen tribute album called I'm Your Fan, which I recently acquired on vinyl, although I've had the CD since 1991, I guess. But the last time my friend Alan was at my house, he gave me this, which is the cassette version of I'm Your Fan, which is very, very cool to have. Here's everyone knows what a cassette looks like. Let me show you a less glary image of the cover, hopefully. There it is. Which I think this is probably the best Leonard Cohen tribute album. And when I mentioned the vinyl copy last time, I noted the fact that the liner notes were somewhat lacking, to put it politely. The CD had all the lyrics plus images of all the artists involved in this tribute album. And if you know the cover for the I'm Your Man record, the Leonard Cohen record, he is pictured in a kind of like a Miami Vice suit eating a banana with sunglasses on. And so everyone in the images has a banana. So that is included in the cassette edition as well as the CD, but not in the vinyl version, which I think is pretty weird. But having this cassette in my hands does remind me that when I was a younger person, let's say, many years ago, I gave away so many cassettes. I kind of purged a lot of them, and I think that's because some of them I had on CD, and I guess I didn't see the value of them anymore. Maybe I was moving or ran out of space. So, for example, I gave away a copy of an early version of Joy Division's Unknown Pleasures, probably from like 82 or 83, and things like that. I sometimes remember them as I'm thinking about records. I kept all the Leonard Cohen ones, including some that are sealed still to this day, which is interesting. You know, in areas that might not seem like such a crime, as I gave away some Phil Collins cassettes. You know, I do like some of his music, but that's not really a crying point as far as I'm concerned. So let's get into the rest of these things. And there's a place in town that is a coffee shop / record store. So they had their anniversary sale on the weekend. I didn't go Saturday, but I stopped on Sunday for a little while. I bought a couple things. And one of them is in the category of things that are a dumb mistake or stupid things that happened. So let me just say that this is the record I'm going to talk about. It's Jim Croce, I Got a Name. Now, this is someone I probably shouldn't like because I often think about music I listened to as a child, and certain of that music I just can't stand anymore. A good example is country western music, because there was a lot of it in my childhood. I just cannot stomach that music. The sound of it just makes me go crazy. I just don't like it. Another example would be ABBA, because my dad played it endlessly. It was just so tiring. And Jim Croce was played a lot in our house and friends' houses. So ideally, I shouldn't actually like him, but I seem to still like him. Although I don't have any until I bought this record. Now this is 1973, so I've got a name. Price was $4.98, but on sale it was like $3.40. So I decided to grab this. And you know, it's cheaper than what you'd find in a thrift shop around me now. And as I always do, I open up the record and look at the insides, and this one is in excellent shape. It's beautiful. I'd say very good plus, maybe better than that even, without having played it, but it's the wrong record. This is You Don't Mess Around with Jim, a different Jim Croce record. So I've got a mismatched record, which is irritating now because I don't know what I'm going to do with that. Anyway, it's kind of frustrating. And I thought of going back, but I'd have to go back, and it's like for $3.50. I don't see the point, so I guess I'll just hold on to it and see what happens. Another thing I got there was a 12-inch single, and this ties in quite nicely with a video I just watched from Mike at PC31, the Vinyl Policeman, who showed the 1986, well, the box set for the 1986 Public Image Limited record called Album. And I saw this in the bins, the 12-inch called Home, with the bonus with the track Round on the other side. There's two versions of Home, version of Round. This is a 12-inch single note, labeled 12-inch, and the the label actually is labeled Label. There's the PIL logo on the other side. Just dropped it. So this also was $4.98, marked down to like $3.40. So I couldn't turn that down, especially given the fact that I have seen this before in stores for around $15, which I thought was outrageous. I do have quite a number of PIL 12 inches. Well, I'm not sure how many I should count them, I suppose. And I do buy them if they're reasonably priced and in good shape. This one's pretty minty, and the price was excellent, and it's good. So I bought that. And then a band from Cleveland. So this is a really strange kind of avant-garde band called Pere Ubu, Trouble on Big Beat Street from 2023. And, you know, Pere Ubu is one of those bands that I don't have a complete collection. I have quite a lot, and I've loved everything I've heard from them. It's a very weird band. If you don't know them, they're very, how would you even describe them? Kind of angular, exotic in some way. The only consistent member has been David Thomas. This is the flip side here, who's been the only consistent member of the band through their entire career. I've liked everything I've heard from them, even the commercial detour they took with the track, you know, that album that had Waiting for Mary on it. Is it Cloudland? I still enjoyed that. And this one is actually good. It sounds like a Pere Ubu record. It's a little difficult to listen to if you're expecting like a pop song, because it's not really that. It's interesting photography here. And when this came out in 2023, I think I saw it listed on Amazon for something like $63, which I thought was just outrageous. I haven't even, the closest record shop to me didn't have it, but I had a price watch on. If you use Camel, you copy over the URL for your wish list on Amazon, and it will alert you when there's sales happening, and you can also update it to say you only want to see records or see items that fall below a certain threshold. So this came in at like $25-ish, somewhere around there, so I thought that was a pretty good deal. So no download code though on that one. And then a record from an artist that I have quite a few records from, and it's Gary Numan. The funny thing is, my original discovery of Gary Numan, like so many other people I think, was the album that had Cars on it. So I heard the song Cars many times, thought it was interesting. The surprising thing to me is that my brother bought that record. My brother passed away a couple years ago. He was really interested in terrible music. I think he had the worst taste in music of anyone I ever knew. He was also really interested in disco music, which I thought was funny because he wasn't really a dancer or anything. I will say I have more tolerance for disco now than I did back then. At the time, I was listening to far different music, but after all those Donna Summer and Amy Grant records, and he was also a big fan of Elvis, but not until Elvis died. As soon as Elvis died, he became a fan. But he came in with this Gary Numan record called The Pleasure Principle, and I was kind of like stunned because it didn't really sound like the music he listened to, and I kind of was intrigued by it, but I didn't really jump in on Gary Numan for quite a few years, and I actually really appreciate his music. He started with that sort of more punk sound and then became sort of synthy, and then some experimental years, I suppose, and then he came back with what only could be described as an industrial sound. So this record called Hybrid is in that industrial period. It still goes on to this day, but you know, he's a friend of Trent Reznor, so this is kind of like Nine Inch Nails inspired industrial music. And this is a reimagined album. Well, not an album, a collection of reimagined songs. So the hype sticker, if you can read that, collection of reinvented classics. Mentions some tracks and who's involved. And people involved here are Gary Numan, for example, because he actually reinvented some of them. Curve, Flood, Andy Gray, Alan Moulder, Rico, Sulfur. So what this is a double LP of tracks that, for the most part, were previously released and then changed somehow. So let me just say that the CD came out in 2003. There was a vinyl pressing in 2004 that was limited, and this is the 2020 repressed version. So the CD had 19 tracks. This only has 16. So there are 3 tracks lacking on this collection. If you can see the back here, you'll see some of the songs. So Hybrid, Crazier, and Ancients are new tracks. Some of these tracks were reinvented by Gary and some by the artists mentioned here. And, for the most part, I think this is pretty good. It has that sound. If you've listened to recent Gary Numan, has that kind of sound on his journey to this more industrial sound. And I think that really works with his voice, and I think it actually makes a lot of sense. But I will say that a couple of tracks, for me, in my opinion, just don't work as well. Like, for example, Cars would be the classic example. Cars on here, I mean, everything you knew and loved about the original track is completely dismantled on this track to the point where it's hardly recognizable. And it is recognizable, but I don't think I like that. Our Friends Electric is also a challenging one for me. On the other hand, I think Down in the Park is actually really good. Every Day I Die is kind of a fun track. So, hit and miss. I think generally pretty good, but maybe not perfect. And I think if you are wedded to the originals, you might not love it. Both of these discs are on red vinyl. So I'm happy to have that. This is another item that I had on my Amazon wish list, and it never came down to a good price. But I found it in a local record store sitting in a bin. I guess I'd been there before and kind of overlooked it, and the price seemed reasonable to me, so I grabbed that. And I'm happy to have it. It kind of fills a hole in my Gary Numan collection. Moving on, here we have Death Cab for Cutie, and this is called Thank You for Today. Now, I mentioned Death Cab for Cutie quite recently because I had bought a copy of Transatlanticism, and side A was Full of Noise, and I mentioned in a later video I was able to get my money back on that, but I haven't bought a new copy because I guess I was kind of worried that they all were like that. I'll call that probably is not true, but I haven't bought one. But I did buy this. It was on sale. This is from 2018. It wasn't on sale. It was a used copy that I found. And it's in really good shape, so I decided to grab it. It has a die-cut sleeve. Has liner notes. And there's a download card in here. Thank you for today. And it is on white vinyl. So the pressing sounds really good. And the songs are actually really good. I don't know enough about Death Cab for Cutie to talk about their eras, but I do know that I think some people felt that they lost a bit of something in the middle years. This is kind of like a return to form, which I think is fair enough. Their lyrics always seem to me to be really personal and emotional, and that certainly comes through here. The whole thing has a feeling of it's kind of quiet and sort of understated. I wouldn't necessarily call it folky, but a very sort of quiet sort of sound, a mellowy sound. But I think it's actually really good. I've quite enjoyed that one. And let's move on to a record that came out in 2010, an album that came out in 2010. And in the first week that it was out, I bought a CD copy of it because I thought it was great. And it did, every time I buy something that I have on a different format, I'm left to wonder, like, why did I do that? In the early days when I was buying CDs, I was buying things that I had on vinyl, and it was like, why am I doing this? But sometimes there'd be incentives like bonus tracks or something like that, so I bought them, and then this record sat in the box. But I unpacked my boxes of records maybe in 2013 and hooked up my turntable again, and then I was in this position where sometimes I was buying records that I had on CD that I bought in those years. So anyway, I bought this in 2010 when it came out on CD, but this is the record actually from 2010 as well. And this is from Black Mountain. It's called Wilderness Heart. Love that album cover. They're like a neo-psych band from the west coast of Canada. If you don't know them, I'm going to suggest you listen to the Hair song, the lead-off track. If you like that, you may like the record. I think they're pretty cool, and I have some other stuff from them. So there's only one thing left, and it is the band called Simple Minds. I just wanted to say that, this is one of those bands that I was all in with through the 80s when I first discovered them, which was probably around 83 maybe. I loved everything they did. I thought they were great. And I followed them right up until 1989 when they released Street Fighting Years, which I think is actually a really good record. And then in the 90s, my musical taste or my direction in listening to music changed quite radically. So I was listening to less stuff from the 80s. So my listening of my time devoted to listening to music from the 80s and bands that were popular in the 80s kind of ended. I didn't really follow any bands that I was following in the 80s. So it's really weird. I had all this catching up to do in later years. Anyway, I was thinking about Simple Minds because I showed this record in a previous video, Walk Between Worlds, that I found at a local shop for like under $20. And I bought it because I was interested in hearing later Simple Minds, although there's still a huge gap between 1989 and when this came out in 2018. And I think this is okay. It's maybe not as good as I'd hoped for, but I gather that not everyone loves this record anyway. It's maybe a weaker Simple Minds record. But that was a good deal, and I decided to buy it. And the same shop had this one very recently for around the same price, and that's their most recent one, Direction of the Heart from 2022, kind of a pandemic production. There's the back. And the inside. And part of this was inspired by the death of Jim Kerr's father. So this band, though, is quite different from the 80s Simple Minds. Like, it took me a while it didn't take me a while to realize this. It becomes evident when you listen to it that the sound is different. After all, the band is completely different. This is the band, which I think is the touring band now, and I've seen some live clips from them. So even the old songs don't sound exactly like they did back then. Quite, in some cases, I think quite different. So the sound, I would say, is a little more polished, maybe. I don't think we're ever going to have a Simple Minds record that sounds like the tracks you heard, like New Gold Dream or Love Song or I Travel. I think those days are long gone, but I think this is pretty enjoyable. I have listened to it a couple times. I guess the time will tell, though, and I'll see what I think of it in future. But I guess it probably won't appeal to me as much as the earlier stuff, but we will see. I guess every band changes direction at some point or matures their sound, I guess. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.